This is CBC Vancouver News.
We're just waiting for a glimpse of hope for us to leave.
A fifth Canadian is killed in the Middle East, with hundreds on both sides still desperate to escape the violence. Plus,
overly long wait times and just missing ferries.
Peak season is over, yet many BC Ferries passengers were hit with another weekend of hours-long delays. And
it brings something so meaningful for me.
The local Latin community teaches the origins of an ancient tradition, passing it down for generations to come. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. We begin again in the Middle East, where the UN has issued an ominous warning about the crisis in Gaza. It says the fuel powering hospitals will run out in about 24 hours. This ended a day that saw Israel in a bit of a holding pattern, poised for a ground offensive into a Gaza Strip already overwhelmed by the air campaign, the blockade, and the dead. The CBC's Margaret Evans begins our coverage from Jerusalem tonight.
In Gaza, they can't bury the dead fast enough. Ice cream trucks that once offered sweet treats to children, now cold storage for bodies, piling up, at least as long as the fuel to power them lasts. This ferocious war goes beyond the right to self-defense, says Yasser Ali, a doctor. The cemeteries are already full. Israel says 600,000 have heeded its call to evacuate northern Gaza, many taking the 24-hour deadline already extended once to heart, trying to move south, an impossible task even for some of the healthy. In northern Gaza's hospitals, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya says to move the most vulnerable of patients would be to hand them a death sentence. If you want to kill us, he says, kill us while we continue working here. We will not leave. Even for those who have fled, Israeli airstrikes continue to hit targets in the south. And with the evacuation deadline already passed, the waiting for what comes next becomes all the more unbearable. In Israel, too, people wait anxiously for the ground war they believe is imminent. None more so, perhaps, than the families of those taken hostage by Hamas gunmen during their bloody rampage. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met some of them tonight, the families emerging to talk to journalists afterwards.
My family, five members of my loved family are kept hostage by the Hamas.
Ido Dan says people want assurances.
The Prime Minister specifically announced to us that one of the objectives of this war is to bring our loved ones back.
Mirev Gonen last heard from her 23-year-old daughter Romi on the phone, terrified and hiding from Hamas gunmen after she'd been shot at a dance party near Gaza.
And that's it. That's the last time I heard from her. And we just know that her cell phone is in Gaza.
Others have blamed Netanyahu for Israel's descent into chaos, joining protests against him. Avichai Brotz, whose wife and children are missing, doesn't want a war.
Just to stop the bloodshed. And I ask Hamas, which is holding my family, I hope, again, in good health, please stop, and the Israeli government to please stop and just bring the women and children back.
But as each long day casts its shadow, descent into even darker times feels inevitable.
Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Also tonight, confirmation that a fifth Canadian has been killed in Israel and 3 others remain missing. Meanwhile, hundreds of Canadians are desperate to escape the violence, some in Gaza waiting for safe passage through Egypt. The CBC's JP Tasker continues our coverage with more on the situation at the border.
With the war poised to intensify, Canadian Mo Nasser is trying desperately to get out of the Gaza Strip.
We're just waiting for a glimpse of hope for us to leave. We're waiting for someone to tell us that it's okay to cross. Otherwise, we have nowhere to go. There's no escape.
There's only one possible way out, and that's through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. It remains closed despite international efforts to ensure safe passage for foreign nationals.
It's unthinkable what's going on here. People don't know where to go, what to do.
Canadian officials are saying there may be only a small window to flee.
Hamas is probably playing some obstruction inside of Gaza as well.
Fearing chaos at the border, Ottawa is urging stranded Canadians to be cautious.
We are not telling people to go straight to that border until we have an understanding that there will be an opening.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is in the region to try and coordinate not just getting Canadians out, but getting aid in.
We're calling for a humanitarian corridor. There absolutely needs to be food, water, and fuel going into Gaza, because this is one of the worst places to be in the world right now.
There's concern in Israel, too. Canadian Jennifer Adwocat was on her first trip abroad there when Hamas launched its brutal attack.
The air raid sirens went off and we had to go down to the shelter here.
According to Global Affairs Canada, she's one of 2,300 Canadians clamoring to get on board a military flight out of Israel.
There's been very little word at this time, so we're just hoping and praying and waiting for them to get back to us.
There's been claims all weekend the Rafah border crossing will open. That hasn't panned out. Canadian officials say people shouldn't approach the area until there's official word. They're also warning that only Canadian citizens may be able to get out. Permanent residents may be stuck in Gaza for now. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
In local news, parents, teachers, and children are still dealing with the fallout of yesterday's suspicious fire at a school in Port Coquitlam. Hazel Trembeth Elementary is completely out of commission indefinitely. Our Akshay Kulkarni has more on what's next for the hundreds of displaced students.
We're going to rally behind the school. We're going to rally behind our students. And we're going to put our kids first.
School District Chair Michael Thomas says that Port Coquitlam residents have come together to help their neighbours. It comes as Hazel Trembeth Elementary School was completely torched by a large fire. It was first reported just after 3 a.m. Saturday. More than 300 children attend the school, which was first built in the 1970s. They will now be sent to Winslow Centre in Coquitlam, a former high school that is now a district facility. Thomas says this means none of the children will be separated from their classmates.
The good news was that we had 10 classrooms available for each and every one of those divisions.
An online fundraiser has been set up to support families affected by the blaze, and physical donations are also being accepted at the Port Coquitlam Community Centre. RCMP say anyone with more information on the fire should get in touch. Akshay Kulkarni, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC Ferries resumed most sailings between Tsawwassen and Swartz Bay this evening. Customers were hit with extreme delays and cancellations throughout the weekend, with 2 vessels out of service. Our Yasmin Gandham has the latest in what's been a frustrating few months for ferry passengers.
Relief from travelers who experienced significant delays on Friday and Saturday.
Overly long wait times and just missing ferries. So it would be nicer if we had a little bit more ferries, like a couple more at least.
Now being met with somewhat of a smoother departure.
Yeah, no, we know the schedule. We're from the island, so we travel quite a bit. So, we're actually here almost 2 hours early for our ferry.
BC Ferries says 2 vessels are out of commission, including the Spirit of Vancouver, though crews are doing what they can.
Normally we would have had that ship in service, so we would have been able to provide extra service on the run, but unfortunately that's not the case because we need to get that vessel repaired as soon as we can. We did see some overloads Friday as well as Saturday. So far today, things are flowing smoothly.
Most travelers we spoke to were successful in securing a reservation, and even without one, others were mostly able to get on board.
It's been pretty tiring.
Really? How long have you been having to wait?
Probably like 2 minutes. Oh, I didn't get bored.
This comes after all weekend sailings on the Schwartz Bay to Tsawwassen route were sold out early Thursday afternoon, and some were waiting almost 8 hours for a sailing on Friday.
And it just sucks that you live on the island, born and raised. It's our only highway in and out. We should have some sort of priority. Like if you're from the island and you're born and raised there, you should have some sort of priority getting on and off. The reservations screws everything up to go back and forth.
Better coming back today for sure. We came over from Victoria on
Friday, and that was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah.
So what happened on Friday?
Well, the sailing wait was like all day.
BC Ferry says the Spirit of Vancouver Island will be back up and running Thursday. The company hopes it will ease some stress for passengers and clear overloads on the busy route. Customers are strongly advised to make reservations to secure a spot. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Tsawwassen.
The technicians responsible for maintaining and repairing roughly 60% of elevators in BC could go on strike as early as Tuesday. The union representing them had been in bargaining with the employers, which are four multinational companies, until those talks broke down last week. The union is vowing to keep elevators in hospitals and long-term care homes running, regardless of any potential strike action. Both sides are meeting with the Labor Relations Board tomorrow to decide whether elevator technicians are considered an essential service. Well, Day of the Dead celebrations are fast approaching, and today dozens of people, young and old, learned more about the ancient tradition and its origins. Our Janella Hamilton stopped by a free event put on by the local Latin community, which they say is key to preserving their culture.
You don't cut the top here, the one we hold. As a young girl in Sinaloa, Mexico, Carmen Keach says she grew up making papel picado, a decorative art form made by cutting elaborate designs into sheets of paper, used in celebrations across Latin America.
It's part of who we are.
She says the technique is adapted from an ancient tradition practiced by Aztecs, who would use bark as paper to decorate religious sculptures, shrines, and burials.
Papel picado symbolizes the wind, and it symbolizes how fragile is life, right? And symbolizes joy.
Today, papel picado is used to adorn Day of the Dead altars to honor loved ones who've died.
For me, it's kind of healing, but they bring something so meaningful for me.
We need to make sure that our new generations, far from home, learning all the traditions and cultural things that we have back to home.
As part of the Latin American Heritage Month Festival, she and volunteers with Latin Vancouver are showing younger generations how to make the traditional Mexican craft.
My wife is Mexican, so we wanted them to learn about Mexican traditions. I think this is one of the most popular Mexican traditions.
I'm learning how to carve a pumpkin. They need to learn how to do this paper.
A piece of nostalgia for some who took part in Sunday's workshop. For others, it's a chance to learn about different cultures.
It's seldom to know about this in Hong Kong. Now it's hard to learn from Latin American culture.
I was more or less in touch with the Mexican culture, so I wanted to know a little bit more about this altar.
This community altar made up of photos and memorabilia of family and friends who have passed away, and paper flowers thought to guide the souls of the dead back to the living through their strong scent and bright colors.
They come in and bring the picture of the beloved one to share with us and light a candle.
Visitors to Granville Island can add to the altar until November 2nd, when the Day of the Dead ceremony will be held. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
On Vancouver Island, the second annual Butterfly Run was held today in Nanaimo. It's in support of families who faced infertility, pregnancy loss, and infant loss, while also raising money for programs to help.
If you look around and you watch closely, you'll see that there's grief and there's tears, but then there is also this gratitude of being able to be together and to be able to celebrate our children and to hold hope for children that we long for in the future.
Last year's run in Victoria raised more than $140,000, and this year's run in Nanaimo has raised another $10,000. It's estimated 1 in 6 Canadian women will deal with infertility, while 1 in 4 will experience miscarriage or pregnancy loss. While still on the island, it's being called a pairing written in the stars. Chocolatiers showed off their sweet treats in the capital city today to fundraise for the Victoria Film Festival.
You know, chocolate's magic, film is magic. Why not put the two together? And then it's like, film is really good for you, releases endorphins, and so does chocolate.
Organizers say tickets went so fast this year, they're optimistic this can become an annual event. And coming up, a closer look at Metro Vancouver's latest homelessness stats and why a disproportionate number are Indigenous. More on what is and isn't being done to help them next. Well, Metro Vancouver released its homeless count this week, and it was a startling report that showed a massive increase in the number of people without a roof over their heads. And a large number of them are Indigenous. Our Indigenous Affairs reporter, Wamish Hamilton, takes a deeper look at why they're on the streets, what's there to help them, and what isn't.
The 2023 Metro Vancouver homeless count numbers are out. New in the count this year were questions about residential school. 1/3 of those who responded identified as Indigenous. Of them, 64% said they had a history or family connection with residential schools. The schools have been closed for decades, but for many Indigenous people struggling with homelessness in the city, it's like the schools are still open. We're about to meet up with an outreach group that serves bagged lunches in the downtown east side. Among those they serve are residential school survivors and others who didn't go but still live with its impacts. Charles Morrison vividly remembers his residential school experience. The Haisla First Nation member went to the Alberni Indian Residential School in 1964. He ran away, but to this day, he can't outrun his trauma.
I only went there 1 year, but that 1 year just totally screwed up my whole life, because when I had to run away, from there, and I didn't realize how selfish I was until I got back home again, because my family was on the other side yet, and I was home, and I struggled with that a lot, and I blame myself for abandoning them. So, excuse me. I believe the numbers because I see a lot of myself down here in the people I see, and it's really hard to see. And I know it's part of the residential school. I have a lot of friends down here that have gone to residential school, and their grandkids are even down here now too, living on the streets, and their generational trauma.
I would be first generation that didn't attend residential school. Both my parents attended residential school, and my stepmom actually attended residential school. Growing up on reserve and seeing that some households were very different from mine, and I remember asking myself, or saying to myself, like, where's the love? Because I had a very loving grandparent, I had loving parents within the home, and we were always very well cared for, and I seen some households were very different. As I started to learn more about it and understand the impacts and the dysfunctions that have impacted our communities and our households, that's kind of what brought me to working with the homeless, because I was very fortunate and I'm able to give back something.
You've been an outreach worker down here for a long time.
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah. Majority of the people that I interact with, my clients I have three that are in the area that went to residential school. Many of our clients are intergenerational trauma who were raised by their grandma or their grandparents or their parents who went to residential school.
They're still impacting people who didn't even go. Why do you think that is?
Well, those traumas that the parents and grandparents endured, they brought that home. The uncles, the aunts, they brought that home. And unfortunately carried on those traumas to the kids. And now those kids, unfortunately, some of them end up down here. And they're running from the traumas. And this is something I've always mentioned, that this is why we established the All Nations Outreach Society, is that we want to stop that running. And let them know that it's okay to hurt, but don't die doing so.
My daughter and her son are down here. I came down here to help them survive, and I've been here ever since. I want to move home, but there's no places to live up north for me. I live with my family, but nobody helped. Like, remember that saying, it takes a village to raise a child? It doesn't work. Because, my whole family was kind of abandoned, and when I ran away, nobody in my family helped me. I wouldn't get food, no wood, no nothing. I think we have to heal. Even that's hard, because there's no facilities around that will take in people for residential school.
That's our Wamish Hamilton reporting, and stories like this can be upsetting. If you or someone you know is looking for support, you can always call the 24-hour National Residential School Crisis Line at 1-866-925-4419. And you're looking at a live shot up Cambie Street with City Hall in the background. We have more widespread rain set to move across much of BC this week. I'll have your 5-day forecast coming up next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Chutzpah Festival returns November 2nd to 23rd with an exciting lineup of performances, including dance, music, theater, and more. For tickets, visit chutzpahfestival.com. And join CBC Vancouver's Leanne Young at the Alumni UBC Achievement Awards November 14th. The event honors members of the UBC community through their endeavors and commitment to help shape a better world.
And let's take a look at the full forecast. And it's quite a nice evening right around the South Coast. You can still see fairly mild temperatures right across the region, if not a little bit soggy. That rain will persist off and on, not only across the South Coast, but right across much of the province. Here's where we stand right now. 10 degrees still in Cranbrook. A little cooler, of course, further north you get. 8 degrees in Fort St. John. And here's what we're looking at with this latest system. It's coming in pulses. We saw that start yesterday, and here's how it looked into today and into tonight. You can see the rain really ramping up, especially as it hits the South Coast and then moves east into the interior as well. The Okanagan, Kelowna getting some pretty heavy showers overnight and into tomorrow, and we'll see that rain continue for most of the province. Here's where we stand with our temperatures for tomorrow. It looks a little bit deceiving. It's not going to be a total washout for most areas. We're looking at a chance of showers off and on. We'll probably see some breaks of sun, some blue sky as well. So not completely raining the entire time, but we will see this pattern continue through much of the work week. Here's how it looks for the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. As we said, those showers off and on. And by the way, tonight into tomorrow, we're going to see the winds pick up as well. So it will be quite blustery as well, especially when we see those heavier downpours coming in across the region. And then we'll start to gradually dry out. We'll see the sun return towards the end of the week, and we'll probably warm up a little bit as well. And that is your late news for this Sunday, October 15th. For News Anywhere, anytime, you can download the free CBC News app. Thank you so much for watching this weekend. Good night.